What's up?
What's going on?
It's Dregs One, San Francisco rap cat, graffiti artist, and welcome to the first episode, the pilot of the History of the Bay podcast. And with me right here, I got my brother Scino.
What's going on with y'all?
This is one of the producers of the show, along with DEO, when we're live here at Official Business Studios. We got my man King Said of MVP Productions behind the lens. And also special shout out to the executive producer, Whitney Chanel, behind the scenes making things happen. And thank you for being here with me today, my brother.
Of course. Had to pull up, it's the pilot, man. So we getting everything straight and ironed out right now. So
yeah, iron out all the kinks, all the technical issues.
Talk about it.
And the reason that we're doing this is, in case you didn't know, the History of the Bay series I've been doing on Instagram and TikTok been blowing up. It's been doing really well. People been asking me for a podcast, and I want to expand on the platform and give people a chance to connect with some of the artists that I've been talking about directly, and we've talked about this on other pieces of content, other segments, but it's been really cool just reaching different people and, tapping into all these different people who are interested in graffiti, hip hop, Bay Area culture overall. And I think this is going to be a new way to reach even more people.
Definitely. And I feel like it's very necessary just in this day and age of information. And I feel like you are the perfect person to give the history of the Bay. So I just want to give you your flowers before we even get going.
No, thanks, man. I appreciate that a lot. And, a lot of people have been asking me how I started off doing this. Mm-hmm. And it's really, and we talked about it before, as a rapper, you need more nowadays than just your music to get out there. You need some type of content. And for me, I'm not going to do like a TikTok dance or some, I'm a graffiti cat and I'm a rap cat, so that's what I'm
keeping it authentic.
About. Yeah, exactly.
So I got to ask you, what was the first video that really had you feeling like, this is something that I enjoy doing? Or was it before the video where you felt like, I just like giving information out?
It took off from day one. The first video I did was about the graffiti spot Psycho City in San Francisco, and it was just something I was experimenting with. I'm not the world's foremost expert on this stuff. I don't have all the answers. I don't have all the information. But I just threw it up, went to sleep, and when I woke up, my TikTok was going crazy, and my followers had just exploded, like literally overnight. So I said, all right, I'm do it again.
Dope. Yeah, so you got some questions from some viewers, some supporters of yours. I don't want to call them fans. That may be disrespectful, but you have some supporters that submitted some questions, and I just want to ask you a couple of the questions that we have.
Yes.
Cool with that?
Yeah, and while you load that up, also, this would be a good opportunity to shout out our first sponsor, Amoeba Music of San Francisco.
Talk about it. Shout out Amoeba.
Salute. Thanks to Shona and the whole team down there for reaching out and tapping in. That is the perfect sponsor for this podcast because that's my favorite record store that I grew up going to. They've been selling my music. My music is available there right now. Go get it.
Can't forget that.
Yeah. And as well as a lot of the other artists that we're going to be discussing on the show. So salute. You see we out here representing. Thanks, Amoeba.
For sure.
Yeah.
One of our first questions is from Frank. Shout out Frank from Pittsburgh. He says, I feel like the Bay doesn't get the credit it deserves in hip hop. Do you feel the same?
100%. I think most of us in the Bay Area feel that way. I've thought about this a lot, and I think I'm a hip hop historian. I'm not just a Bay Area cat. I love hip hop in general, and you got to give it up to the cats in the Bronx and New York City that helped start this. The thing about New York City is that it's not only the birthplace of hip hop, it's where a lot of these labels and entertainment companies and theater companies, it's where a lot of media comes from. So I feel like it makes sense that a lot of the spotlight from early on in hip hop, it wasn't on the South, it wasn't on the West Coast at first, it was on New York and the East Coast. Eventually, the West Coast did take off as well, mostly LA artists, and the reason for that is the same, I would say. It's that's where the labels are.
Yeah.
That's where the movies are made. That's where TV is made. The thing is that there actually was a period in the early 90s when major labels were looking at the Bay Area. You had E40 on a major label. You had Too Short, Spice One, The Coup, Souls of Mischief, Dell, Casual, all these guys from Hieroglyphics on major labels. There's probably many more. I can't. The Loonies, Drew Down, all these guys signed major label deals. For one reason or another, it seemed like that major label interest kind of trickled off, and I do think a big reason of that is regional. Like, just like I said, the fact that the labels are in LA. But to really go back to the question, I think it's messed up that we don't get the credit because there's so many artists from the beginning, like literally Too Short in the early 80s, so many Bay Area artists that have impacted hip hop culture. And to this day, there's so much talent that comes out of the Bay Area. You know, you've seen a lot of the stuff on Twitter, like people complaining. People from the Bay think that everything came from there. Well, we did. We did pioneer. Not everything, but we pioneered
a vast majority.
A lot of stuff, man. And it's not, and it's so many different styles. Like I said, you got everybody from E40 to Hyro to The Cool to so many different styles of music have come out of the Bay Area. So many impactful rappers, producers, even people on the industry side. And I think like just now in the last few years, you're starting to see the South become one of these other major hubs. The South was disrespected for a long time too and wasn't getting props. I feel like the Bay Area, there's a few cats that have broken out of the box, but in terms of understanding what we've really contributed to hip hop, I don't think the industry has done that yet.
No, and I like that answer, and correct me if I'm wrong, but to summarize, it's more so the infrastructure that we lack here in the Bay Area that kind of stagnates us a bit.
I would say so. Yeah, I would say so. I mean, you got to think, man, like if you're rapping in New York in the late 80s, early 90s, you could take the train to Midtown and try to walk up in some of these big offices.
Literally just open the door and say, I got a meeting with whoever.
Yeah. And a lot of cats did. They bogarted their way in the door like that. If you're in LA in the early days rocking at some open mic, you never know. Some executive might just be there at the bar having a drink and hear you. It's not quite like that in the Bay, but we created our own infrastructure independently. And the thing about the Bay is not just one city. It's a huge region of all these different cities, all these different areas that we've been able to capitalize on independently. And that's why we have our own thing going on here that's kind of like pure and uncut. You know what I mean?
Okay. So as far as, you know, just the trajectory of the Bay Area and the music scene from, like, let's say the early 90s, how do you feel like it's changed since not the start, but just since the early 90s and like the emergence of Bay Area artists and the independence? Like, has it changed or has it progressed, or does it still feel like it's in the same state?
I think it changed a lot. I think you had, in the early 90s, you had cats that started off independently, like 40 and Short, that were able to transition into major labels. And then you had, like I said, you kind of had a lot of major label interests, or a lot of cats got deals, but then a lot of cats also got dropped, or it just didn't work out. The labels didn't know how to package them, and it forced them to go back into the underground and to be independent. I think a big hit that the whole music industry took, and the Bay Area, was in the late 90s, early 2000s, when the illegal downloading hit, the CD market dried up. People didn't really know, you know, what to do with the situation changing with music. And now we're in the internet era. And now there's a lot of Bay Area cats, there's a lot of young artists that are able to market themselves really well on the internet, but it's not quite the same understanding of how to get this money. You know what I'm saying?
Something as simple as just
monetizing and taking advantage of the soil. Like I said, you got San Jose, Frisco, Richmond, you got all these different cities. You can go city to city and get money, not just on the internet. And also the whole idea of like being a tycoon, being like a Master P or like a 40 or a JT the Bigger Figure. I feel like that aspect is kind of lacking a little bit I mean,
like the self-sufficiency of
the
it.
self-sufficiency and the business tycoon, like that industry mind state of not just, all right, I'm gonna rap and get some streams and get some shows. Or like, nah, how am I gonna build an independent empire? I don't think there's too many cats thinking like that nowadays.
Right. And just to segue into just the overall art of hip hop, you know, because you mentioned you're a graffiti artist, and for the people that do follow you, they know you're a phenomenal graffiti artist. Can you pinpoint a moment in history where hip hop and graffiti intersected?
You know, that's an interesting question because I was kind of raised under the impression that, you know, like they have the elements of hip hop, breaking, DJing, rapping, and graffiti. I actually learned not too long ago that was actually kind of a concept that came after. It was kind of a marketing thing around some of those movies that came out, like Wild Style and Star Wars. They were like, oh, these kids are breakdancing. Oh, these kids are DJing. All right, let's just kind of all put it together under this hip hop thing. But it kind of all makes sense anyway because graffiti and rap, it's just urban expression. It's still even you know, it's still pioneered by inner city black and brown youth. That's who came up with this stuff. It doesn't matter who you are today if you want to do it, but you got to understand the roots of who started it. So I think in those terms, like we were just talking about KRS-One earlier off camera, you know, he was a writer. Fat Joe was a writer. There's a lot of cats that dabbled in graffiti that took the approach to rap.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when was the first instance or your first memory with graffiti, or just even testing it out, seeing how your pen worked? When was your first instance?
Going home at age 14 with I decided to become a writer one day when I was 14 years old, and I bought a marker in first period for my boy, and then in homeroom I ran into my boy Mike Ill, and I showed him the marker like, I'm about to start tagging, and he was like, oh, me too, let's go to my house after school. And then after school we like went tagging all along all the way to his house, and then I got to his house and he was a DJ and he had Technic 1200s and he had hella vinyl and he was scratching. He was dope. It was like 9th grade, 14 years old.
So just even that friendship is what got you into
it was graffiti. A community thing, bro. It was a community thing. It was a way to connect with people I met. I mean, some of my greatest friends to this day I met on a random, like riding a bus and oh, you tag? Oh yeah, I hit up too. All right, cool. What you write? Like, yeah, it's always been like an organic community thing for me.
For sure. No, that's the beauty in it, in hip hop, is the community. Right. That you can find, you can be a part of. Right. And even sometimes you can even lose the community and you can feel that impact of losing the community and just having a voice there, you know? Yeah. So that's like, you touched on having that community and how you met somebody that kind of puts you in position.
Yeah, I mean, you learn from your peers. We're all figuring this stuff out together, and this is all pre-internet too, so it's not like we were going home and watching YouTube videos like, how do you become a graffiti writer? Right. Like we was going out there and learning and making mistakes along the way and just figuring it out.
Necessary mistakes.
Necessary mistakes, and then you meet more and more people along the way that can you learn from each other and just keep building that way.
Right. Okay. We got another question from Uzi Spit from Madera, California. He wants to know, what era of graffiti did you enjoy more, the 5-10 years ago or 15? And that's San Francisco or Oakland.
That's an interesting question. I mean, I grew up as a kid seeing the graffiti in the 90s. It was on a different level than what you see today, because I think people who were out in the 80s and 90s were pushing graffiti on a high level of art. That was pretty much all illegal at the time, but it was like people were basically doing illegal murals. Like you could look at the old school photos of like Silver Terrace playground, where like the whole walls are covered in elaborate pieces, like really technical stuff, characters, backgrounds. My era was dope in the early 2000s, but it seemed like, you know, the more time went by, the more gentrification went on. the more like tough on graffiti that the city got in terms of the laws and in terms of painting over stuff really quick. It seemed like the artistic side kind of faded a little bit, where cats were more into just straight up bombing and vandalism and just tagging and hitting stuff up. But you know what? And then Oakland.
That's a good point right there.
Yeah, man. I think it has a lot to do with the city really trying to crack down and present this crispy, clean image. But I think like about 10 years ago, I saw Oakland like really explode. Because Oakland ain't got money for all that stuff.
Yeah.
They ain't got money to go around buffing. The cops got worse things to deal with than some taggers. So Oakland is like, it's just been exploding. There's so much graffiti. I've never seen anything like it. I think there's even more graffiti going on in Oakland than there was back in the day. And even in the city right now, I'm meeting some of these kids, talking middle schoolers. They're going out and they're getting up. And
they got a different passion for it too.
Yeah, they do. They're really passionate about it and they're interested. But I'm hoping that some of these kids start coming out with that artistic side. Like, don't just get up with style. Put up some of these pieces, put up some of these characters, and really make yourself stand out. Like tagging is cool, like bombing is cool. I'm down with all that, but I want to see people push the art, because as a kid, I just saw the most inspiring stuff ever on the walls of San Francisco.
Who would you say is probably being a San Francisco native, who was probably your biggest artistic inspiration?
I mean, even though he's from Oakland, it was Mike Dream. Because he died, I think right when I started doing graffiti.
Wow.
So he was already like an immortal legend. And it was just pretty clear to see like what he stood for in terms of street consciousness. Being a Filipino cat that could connect with all different cultures and still push his heritage. The illest style, to me, he had the illest style that nobody else has been able to duplicate to this day in the world. I really think like he's one of the top graffiti writers to ever live. And even though, like I said, he was from Oakland, he always inspired me. He continues to inspire me.
Right. And when it comes to graffiti, would you say originality trumps all, or is it style?
Style. It's skills, man. I mean, there's a lot of cats who get up in their own original way, and they definitely stand out. But when you see something that's technically executed well and painted, I mean, it's not easy to pick up a spray can and just create something.
Yeah.
So when you see somebody that really knows how to use that tool and really put something dope down, that's going to make you stick out forever. And graffiti is all about letters. At the end of the day, it's all about letter. Even if you're doing characters, even if you're doing symbols, it's like if you can just figure out how to do clean letters, you're always going to stick out in graffiti.
Right. Okay. We got another question from Lo the Illest, Northern California. This is always a crazy question to ask someone. Top 5 graffiti artists of all time.
Man, I'm not a big fan of top 5 lists. Okay. I'm really of any kind.
That's why I always say it's a crazy question. But Lo the Illest, we asked.
I will answer you, brother. Where's he from again?
Northern California.
All right. Top graffiti artists. So I just said Dream.
Okay.
In no particular order. Dream, Twist, Don D, one of the original subway riders from New York.
That's 3.
Scene actually created this right here. He's another subway rider from New York. And that's 4, right? Reminisce. Yes.
Okay. Just because he was the last one, what was it about Reminisce that puts him in your top?
Well, he was actually a sheep. So that's one thing that...
Oh.
Yeah, she was one of the pioneering female graffiti artists. And she was also, even though I just said graffiti is all about letters, she was one of the first people to get up using a character, which is a horse. She painted these white horses. And I even asked my mom about that the other day. Like, you remember seeing horses around San Francisco? She was like, yeah. I was like, oh, okay, that's what's up. So a lot of people, that stuck out to a lot of people. And shout out to Reminisce. She's been tapping in with me on Instagram. I really appreciate that. I hope to bring her on the podcast one day.
Okay, yeah, shout out to Reminisce. We got another question from Bakari from Berkeley. He wants to know your thoughts on the influence of 4080 magazine in the Bay, and are they arguably the best magazine and media outlet from the Bay that covered Bay Area music and beyond?
Well, To be honest, this is a little bit before my time. You know about 4080 magazine?
I don't.
So 4080 magazine was one of the first Bay Area, Northern California hip hop magazines ever. They put out compilations, and they were the first ones to give press and like cover photos to cats like JT the Bigger Figure and Mac Dre. I think Master P was even in there at some point. DL's nodding his head yes. So they were highly influential. And, that's another interesting thing that's like an era that's kind of gone now is the magazine era. Like the Source. And, Double XL is still around, but it's not what it used to be.
Yeah, they even had like the Word Up magazine. And
Yeah. So Murder Dog, I was just going to say Murder Dog was another one. That was one I was more up on. Did you ever read Murder Dog?
No.
That's a crazy name, right?
Murder Dog magazine, man.
Yeah, shout out to Murder Dog though. They kind of followed that same tradition. So 4080, I can't really speak too much on it because it wasn't like I was ever buying it off the shelf. But the fact that Bakari asked about it, the fact that I know enough about it, it was highly,
prominent.
Yeah, it was highly influential. If the people from 4080 magazine are out there, holla at me. I would love to get you on the podcast one day.
Definitely. Shout out 4080 magazine. We got another question from Mike from San Mateo. He said he been in Hayward for 15 years. So shout out to Mike from San Mateo. He says, can you touch on the San Francisco rave scene because it's so close to our rap history and graffiti? They all tie in together. Do you agree with that?
You tell me. You was at the raves, or you had the different color hair, you had the glow sticks, right, back in the day.
You good. I went to one rave, man. I ain't been back, bro. That's all I'm gonna say.
I actually do think it was pretty closely connected because it was the idea of a lot of raves went down in like kind of unusual locations or like not your typical club or venue, and those are kind of spaces where hip hop had to exist as well. You had a lot of DJs that were DJing rave stuff as well as DJing hip hop, and then of course, like we all know, the Thizzle era. That's something I associate a lot with raves, and then at the same time, during the early 2000s, the hyphy era, the Mac Dre Thiz movement, those worlds kind of intersected. A lot of my partners used to get money at raves, just posted up with getting Thizzles off. There was also this crazy documentary, HBO documentary, about this dad who started going to raves with his kids. Did you ever see that?
Nah.
He started popping X and going to raves. And
man, I got a kid and I'm not going to no damn rave. I'm sorry.
I forget what that documentary was called. It was on HBO back in the day, but he went to a rave in San Francisco. But I as somebody that like I never went to raves like that. I do remember seeing flyers. I do have some partners who was into that scene, but I can't speak too much to that. But I do think that he's right. I do think there is some connection out there. I might just not be the best person to speak on it.
Right, but you can attest to it. I just got to say, like, as I'm listening, bro, like, I'm learning shit that I know that they gonna learn, bro. So you, like I said, bro, you the perfect person to even have this platform, bro, because the history of the Bay stretches long, and just the way you just go into your Rolodex, you know the races, you know the genders, you know the areas that they were prominent in. Like, that is so important. And I just have to ask, why? Why is it so important? Why is history so important to you?
Man, I appreciate that, man. I'm glad it's already resonating that way, because this is something like I would have these types of conversations with girls or my friends or something. They'll be like, you need to start like putting this stuff on social media. And I would just never really figure out how. But I mean, it's just like I grew up in it, and I was laced, like we laced each other. My partners and I, we laced each other. We put each other up on different stuff, and it was like almost a competition because it's not stuff that you could just go into Target and get. You can't just crack open a book. This is all pre-internet stuff. Like, if you ain't knowing, you ain't going.
Yeah.
And so I had cats around me that their older brothers would be like, here, listen to this, or like, You know, you would meet certain people, and I just grew up in it, man. Like before I knew what UNLV, the rap group, was, I saw it written on the walls in my neighborhood. And then I put two and two together years later, like, oh, that's what that UNLV thing meant. Like, so that's why it's important to me, because it's really just my life, bro. And it's just something I'm interested in, something I'm really passionate about. And now I'm understanding, like, it's all about how to make a living off your passions, man. That's all I want to do. Yeah. So if I can share this with people and inspire them to do the same, then cool. You know?
No, that's beautiful, bro. Just because as I'm listening to you, you asking me, like, have you ever heard of this? Have you ever heard of that? And I'm like, nah, but you explaining it to me, and I'm like, now I do. Yeah. You know, so that we need people like you, bro. And just first and foremost, like, what would you say is like the most historical part of the Bay? That's a open-ended, vague question, but I just feel like
I got you.
It could be something that we answer at a later date, but I just feel like what makes the Bay the Bay?
I think it's the fact that it's always been a center of social change. Going back to the 60s and even before, it's been a place where people can come and feel accepted, and we're open to building with different cultures. We're not offended by people who are different than ourselves. There's literally anything you could want is out here. Anything that you want to get into is out here. Any language, any type of culture you want to be around, you can find it in the Bay. And since it's such a closed area, like, we all found a way to coexist together. And not only that, like, a lot of these movements, like the Black Panthers and all these other things, have been born out of the Bay Area. And, you know, we fight for these things. You know what I'm saying? It's not something that has died. It's like something that past generations have fought for, and current generations are still fighting for.
So would you say there's not necessarily no historical moment greater than the other?
Oh, you meant one moment?
Not necessarily, but just from your answer, it just sounds like everything played a part in who we are right now.
Yeah, man.
From the social change, the social constructs, to the hip hop, to the food, to the migration. You know, just everything that's happened in the Bay Area is the most important part.
Yeah, you could probably even go back into the pre-Columbus Indian times and find an answer to that. I think so. I think the whole way.
Okay. When it comes to Bay Area culture, we can't leave out skating.
Oh, yeah.
How impactful has the skating community been in the Bay Area, just from your lens?
Pretty heavily impactful, man. San Francisco was definitely a mecca for skateboarders. I never skated personally, but a lot of my partners did. I remember Pier 7 and the Embarcadero, you know, are like still to this day considered like really classic spots. But there are a lot of other skate spots like Hubba Hideout, and now you have the skate park at Potrero, and
it's a new skate park?
It's not new, but I think it was built like maybe 10 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. And graffiti and skateboarding go hand in hand. Skateboarding and hip hop go hand in hand. Like, you know, Selsky always talks about how a lot of the skaters, his music actually took off with skaters because they were using it in the skate videos. And the skate videos are kind of done and distributed like the independent rap is distributed. There's all independent underground, just some cat with a camera filming his friends, putting it together, putting music and other stuff in there. And I used to hang out with kids who would watch those, and they were pretty dope. And a lot of, you know, you got FTC out here, you got Deluxe, you got a lot of big
those are skate brands,
skate stores and brands. Yep. And they, you know, a lot of sponsored skaters are from the Bay Area. You know, got people like Carl Watson and Javante Turner, and a lot of famous skaters, man, have come out of the Bay. A lot of people have come from around the world to skate in the Bay Area. The hills.
Yeah.
You know, you see cats bombing the hills a lot of the time. So, you know, definitely skating, hip-hop, graffiti, all these things are definitely intertwined.
Is it true that Thrasher was started in the Bay Area?
Yeah, I believe so. They have the warehouse down there, I believe, by Bayshore.
Okay.
And, Rest in peace to the founder of, I'm forgetting his name. I'll have to go back to it. But I seen him around at the skate park here and there. A lot of my friends, or Phelps. Phelps
Okay.
was, I forget his first name, but I believe he was the founder of Thrasher. A lot of my friends are, were friends with him. So yeah, Thrasher. Sorry, was it?
Jake Phelps.
Jake Phelps. Yep. Rest in peace to Jake Phelps. Yep. He was a real Frisco cat. I definitely seen him around here and there. So yeah, it's Thrasher again. Another thing we was talking earlier. We think everyone from the Bay thinks everything started here. A lot of stuff you did. A lot of people walk around with Thrasher on their hat or on their shirt don't know that. Yeah, it started out here
in the Bay.
Yep.
Yeah. Nah, that's definitely just impactful in itself. Just that's 3 different cultures we just named. Just hip hop, graffiti, skateboarding. You know, as far as the cities go in the Bay Area, do you feel like they all have their own specialty? And if so, what are they? Like when it comes to, let's say, the biggest cities, San Jose, San Francisco, Oakland, Vallejo.
Nah, man. I think it's all part of the culture. I mean, I guess graffiti is not as big in certain places like Vallejo or like I don't know, certain pockets just because of the demographics. Like, you know, Frisco, there's a whole bus line. You could go around hitting up, bombing.
Yeah.
But Oakland graffiti, as I said earlier, that's off the chain. San Jose, a lot of cats get down there. But I think pretty much no matter where you go in the Bay, you'll find somebody that does one of the things we just discussed.
Yeah. Okay.
I can't say if it's a specialty or not.
Okay. You got another question from Daniel P. from San Francisco. What hyphy rapper, and I'm assuming he's speaking about the era, what hyphy rapper would you most want to roast a blunt with?
Well, I haven't smoked weed for like a year. So man, if I would,
he like, man, they gonna put me under the table.
Yeah,
man.
and to keep it real, when I was smoking, I wasn't into sharing like that. I was rolling to the neck.
Yeah.
Man. But I guess like if I just had the opportunity to chop it up with and chill with anyone from that area, it would probably be Mac Dre.
Okay, I was really gonna ask you. This is a personal question. How important is Mac Dre to Bay Area culture?
He's everything, man. I mean, it's kind of crazy. Even to this day, there's kids who weren't alive during his time that like worship him and know how important he was. I think he was a one of a kind personality that can never be duplicated. He was the sauciest in the game. He was the flyest. He was the most original in terms of his style and the way he dressed, everything, the way he rapped, the beats he was on. And I think he went out at the top of his game. He would have got bigger and bigger had he lived, but like he went out on top. Like you remember, like he took over the Bay Area.
Nah, for real. Just in his demise, it was like, even for me, it was like, I'm gonna be honest. I got to be transparent. In his demise, he became more popular to my generation just because we didn't even understand the lingo at, I don't know how, when it was like 07?
04.
I was 12. I'm aging myself. But it was just the fact that I didn't even understand what he was talking about, what he was going through, until you really have to focus. And that's when someone, passes away untimely, and you really just kind of got to do that research. So I was able to do that research after he passed. But I still was able to, just in the essence of the Bay Area, when everybody was hurting, everybody was just impacted, it was a bittersweet moment.
Yeah, I mean, it was bitter in the fact that he was gone and he never got to realize his full potential and just about to break into that point. But it was sweet in the fact that it was undeniable. His death really made him even more legendary, I guess, in the way that Biggie and Tupac are immortalized forever.
No, for real.
Now you got Nipsey and Draco, other people who are just immortal icons after their passing. Yeah,
that's dope. That's dope. As far as just the music goes, because ultimately you are an artist, of many talents. But that pen, when it comes to the music, you got an album coming though, right?
Yes, sir. I do. Sucker Repellent.
What was the recording process behind that. And is like the history of the Bay involved in that?
Well, the history of the Bay is involved in like everything I do because I represent this culture in my music, and I rap with some of these dudes. So on the album, I got Spice One, I got Selsky, I got Hustler.
Okay.
I got a Selsky beat, which is even crazier. And it's just, that's my vibe. A lot of times people hear my music and they say, oh, this sounds like some old school, like, but in a good way. And that's just the vibe I'm on. And then I'm definitely always rapping about graffiti. There's little graffiti references in all my work. My artwork for the album is always graffiti inspired. But that album is just me getting in the lab with some dope beats and just knocking them out. And the concept kind of came together. I was listening to the songs and I was like, man, I'm talking a lot about haters and suckers on here. So it just kind of became like the idea of sucker repellent is like staying away from haters. Like, I don't want anything to do with you, man.
Yeah.
Like they say success is the best revenge. I ain't even thinking about revenge. I'm just thinking about the success part. I just don't want anything to do with like sucker-like behavior. And a lot of times in my music, like, to keep it real, some people know me as like a conscious rapper. I don't necessarily run around with that title, but I still maintain that because I want to be a good example. And I want to just provide like a positive image for people of like, you know, oh, this is some fly stuff that I could look up to, but he's also not talking about something that's hella ignorant or hella fake or phony. You know what I'm saying?
How important is the substance, how important is the substance and how important is the balance too of being able to have fun, but also I want to get a message across and be taken serious?
It's all balance. It's all balance because that's kind of why I shifted away from that like moniker of a conscious rapper, because the people I really want to reach, they're not going out and listening to like Public Enemy. They're listening to Mac Dre and like, but it's all game. So I can rap some over a dope beat that slaps and say some fly shit and say some intelligent shit and have you bobbing your head to it and have you having fun and have it be something I can perform. But if you really break down what I'm saying something positive, or I'm encouraging you to think, or I might be throwing little jabs here and there at some of the powers that be or some of these things that go on in the system. But I'm not just hitting people over the head with my message because I want it to be digestible. You know what I mean?
And how important is the game? You feel me? You speak of the Bay Area and the game that you've been laced with. So how important is it to you to lace your listeners?
It's what we were talking about, man. That's what the flavor of the Bay out here is like. And that knowledge, the value of knowledge of like, oh, you ain't heard about this. Because the more you know, the more power you have. So the more you understand how the music industry works, the more money you can get out of it. The more money you can get, the more you understand how to use your money, the more you can increase your chances of survival and help other people do the same thing. And it's all game. Like, that's something and it's all life. It's the game of life. Like when we say chess, not checkers, it's really about think about your next move and make your next move your best move. Don't just go jump around the board. You know what I'm saying? So that's something that's like also another heavy theme on the album, and it does tie back into this whole history of the Bay concept, because I feel like in a way, it's kind of what you asked me about earlier about the changes in the Bay. Some of this stuff has just been kind of like we've been losing our identity a little bit. There might be a certain sound of the beats coming out of here and a certain style, but like in terms of like what makes a Bay Area rap cat a Bay Area rap cat, is kind of losing that identity.
We're losing the sauce a little bit.
Yeah, it's becoming a little cookie cutter. There's like a lot of Detroit influence, which is dope. There's a lot of LA influence, which is dope. There's a lot of South influence, which is dope. But like, man, I feel like through this platform, I can influence some of these younger cats to go back to our roots a little more.
And be prideful of this history.
Yeah.
That's how you make me feel, bro. Like
Right
just
on.
in this pilot episode, I just have to say, I'm sitting next to you. I'm not watching it on a screen, so I feel your energy. And it just makes me even more prideful of just being a nigga from the Bay, being
Thanks,
a nigga
man.
from the city, but also spending time in the East Bay, because it's like, as a San Francisco native, I didn't appreciate the East Bay at one point.
Yeah.
Until I got older, and I'm just like, it's a lot of the same shit going on.
Yeah.
We just kind of blind to it if you've never been there. If you've never spent time, if you never shook hands with nobody, if you never did business with nobody over there, it's kind of a foreign territory. But from what you're saying, it's like we are more alike than we think.
Yeah, and I feel like Earth is my turf now, man.
Talk about it.
I be in Hayward, I be in San Ho, I be in Richmond, I be in Sacramento, I be wiggling. It's like I was saying earlier, like if you're a rapper and you're not taking advantage of all these different markets that are within a 20, 30-minute drive from you, you're tripping. Like get off the block, man. Go out there and shake hands and kiss babies, man. Go wiggle.
Campaign, man.
Go campaign, man.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah.
You got a date? Did you mention the name at all?
Sucker Repellent, September 20th.
Talk about it.
September 20th, a release party. More details to be announced October 7th at Public Works in San Francisco.
Okay.
Sucker Repellent is going down.
For sure. So, before we wrap up, what do you want the viewers to take away from not only this pilot episode, but from Dregs One?
I think just stay tuned, bro. Like this is the type of stuff that we're gonna be discussing on a regular basis. I think it's a good time to announce that my first guest ever on the show will be Black C of RBL Posse. I got Conscious Daughters, CMG of Conscious Daughters coming in. I got a whole list of people that are going to be coming on here having conversations just like this. So be prepared to learn, educate yourself, get some game, be entertained. Here's some stories. Here's some stuff that you might not hear anywhere else. Or if you already know about it, you're not going to hear anybody else speaking on it. And hopefully you relate to that. Like people have been saying with my content, man. It's either going to bring you back to the stuff that you had experienced or it's going to put you on to a brand new experience.
Yeah.
We ain't got no time. We got a little more time. We got a couple more questions.
Hey, come on, man.
Let's
look at what do you say? We got Justin. Justin from Alcatraz. You from Alcatraz, Justin? Shout out to you.
Damn.
I was hoping you would talk about any experiences you had on the punk hardcore scene and its involvement with Bay Area graffiti.
Yeah, I bet you didn't know I was in a punk band.
Really?
No.
You had to play the drums.
Nah, it's kind of similar to the rave scene. Like there is a mix punk rock. I do listen to some punk rock, like not a lot, but I listen to a lot of rock and some punk bands, like old school Black Flag and stuff like that. But punk is independent as well. They put out zines. They put out their own album covers. They throw their own shows. They're kind of another genre of music that wasn't accepted by the mainstream. People couldn't understand it, so they had to perform wherever they could. And hip hop started out similar. I was actually sitting down with Andre Nicotino one day, and he was telling me how a lot of his early shows in the early '90s were at the punk rock clubs. That was the only place that would have them. Damn. And it would be kind of a crazy crowd. And then, you know, there's certain people who are kind of mixed into both here and there, like just it's all independent music. Yeah. And I think hip hop and punk rock, period, not just in the Bay, have a strong relationship because they kind of came around in a similar time in the mid '70s.
It was like a similar hustle, you would think?
Yeah, independent is like not some stuff that's, you know, some guy screaming and smashing on a guitar on the radio. Like that's not compared to like the disco era. They wasn't about to play that. You know what I mean? So they had to get it by any means, and they had to hustle independently. Right. So I think it is pretty similar.
Okay. Another question we got Byron from the Excelsior 94112. He says, I would like a word or two on Joe over at the now closed Music Emporium on Ocean Ave and Mission Street.
See, I'm glad we got to this. Rest in peace, Joe. Did you ever go to Creative Music Emporium?
I feel like I've been there.
Yeah, so right there on Ocean and Mission. Dude, I don't know how I found out about this store. I don't know if it's just because I drove by. I might have seen it. I remember reading about it. And you remember Youth Outlook magazine? Yep. I remember it was either a feature on the store itself or it was like a write-up on the Mac Dre Al Boo Boo album. And they said it's available at Creative Music Emporium. So I said, man, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to check it out. And I went after school one day and that was like a paradise, bro. They had all different genres of music, but on the walls they had like original Ice-T posters, like signed Coop Nut, Nicotina, like press photos. And they had a section of hip hop that was almost exclusively Bay Area hip hop. And he had everything, bro. He had everything, like all original pressings, like rare albums, man. I bought Young Ed Time to Stack there. I bought Mac Dre, What's Really Going On. I still have that CD, never opened it because I knew it was going to be valuable one day. And Joe was like an expert, and he knew and he dealt with all these people personally, and he helped them. He gave them a shot to get their music on the shelves, and he really loved music. He would be playing like jazz in there usually, but he was really knowledgeable. I could go ask him about any Bay Area artists, and he would know. And they were a little more expensive because it was a smaller operation, but I would try to go in there on the regular. And he actually gave me a break with my crew, Gas Mask Colony, when we put out our CD. He was very skeptical. He doesn't do consignments. He usually only buys CDs, but he's like, I'll give you a consignment, which is basically you don't make any money until the store sells out. So they hold on to your CD, and then if it sells out all the CDs, then they give you the money. If you don't sell out, then that's the end of that.
Right.
So I'm like, all right, bet, consignment, cool. We went and spread the word, and instantly we sold out. All the people went there and supported. And that's when he really was like, okay, y'all doing it. All right. And he bought the next batch he bought. So rest in peace, Joe. Sad to hear he passed away. The store closed. I would give anything to be able to go back to creative music, man. That was
over on Mission and Ocean.
Mission and Ocean, man. And that's like when you ask about where I get all this knowledge from, it's because I went to places like that. I dug in those aisles, I pulled open the CDs, I read the credits, and it's places like that allowed me to connect with this culture like this, man.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful. I got a personal question. Just all of this wealth of Bay Area knowledge. What was your first Bay Area show?
Like that I went to?
That you went to willingly?
Oh, man. That is a really good question. Oh, dude. It was like it was like a cannabis festival, bro. Before they had cannabis festivals. This was like a big deal. Like nowadays, like, yeah, it's a weed festival.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, cool. Dispensaries. This was like a smoke out in front of City Hall, bro.
What?
Yes. You know, like the Civic Center lawn, like it was right there. And I don't know, it was like back in the day you would hear about stuff like, bro, there's a weed party, blood. Like, there ain't no weed party. Like, bro, I'm telling you, Civic Center, let's go. Went down there hella young. You know, I'm going for the weed. I'm like, man, we about to get hella high, bro. Get down there, it was like, whoa, like you smelt it. They were having like a legalized weed rally. Lolo Swift, if people know who Lolo Swift is from Vallejo, she used to rap with Dre Dogg back in the day. She performed. I seen Selsky walking around with the McDonald's All-American jersey handing out CDs and stuff.
That's classic right there, bro.
Yeah, and there was a lot of there was like some cats that I don't remember who they were, but they were performing. This was an era where like I was down to discover new artists. If you had a CD, if you looked the part, you know, you could get your CD off.
Yeah,
and,
you had to be outside. You had to be there.
Yeah,
you actually had to put the energy into researching and searching for new artists.
Yes,
they didn't just fall in your lap. And if they did, you actually met the person sometimes.
It was like that. Like I said, Selsky was there handing out CDs, man. Like that's I was like 16 years old or something, 15 years old. And I don't know who threw that weed event or whatever happened
by
to
City
it.
Hall, though.
In front of City Hall, bruh. This was unheard of at the time. So I'm glad you asked about that. 'Cause I think that's the first one experience I can really think of.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful, bro. You got anything else?
Maybe on another episode, I'll tell the story of when JT the Bigger Figure brought Gucci Mane to the Opera House on 3rd Street and had an open mic for all the youth. Maybe.
You might need a whole episode on that.
We got time. Where we at with the time? We got time for one more question, or should we wrap it up? Let's get like one or two more, man. Yeah. Sure. I appreciate everybody who tapped in and has been showing support, so I want to make sure I get to as many of these as we can. and the others we'll get to in later episodes.
So we've touched on the artists Mac Dre and Andre Nicotina, but Jerry from Fresno, shout out Jerry from Fresno, he wants to know why Brother Lynch isn't more popular or mainstream.
So there's a conception in the Bay Area that like and just in hip hop period, if you're not signed to a major label, you're not platinum, you're not successful. A lot of cats in the Bay didn't want to get signed because they were getting hundreds of thousands, even millions of dollars independently. And the idea was, what would I need a label for?
Yeah, I'm basically essentially giving stuff away.
Why should I give you a piece of this? Even though I'm not known in all these other markets, I'm doing it big out here. I can't say if that was Brother Lynch's situation specifically, or Mac Dre or Nicotina, but I will say for Brother Lynch, I mean, I think he was on an independent label called Black Market Records out of Sacramento, and I think I've heard him tell the story that they just did bad business, so that might have hurt his career. Even though his first album was like, I believe it's now platinum. It was gold back in the days. But if you think about it, that dude talks about like eating babies and stuff, so that's probably not like.
Also, he was signed to Strange Music for 3 albums.
With Tech Nine?
Yeah.
Damn,
I didn't know that. A lot later.
Yeah.
But that was also
like
a big
at
look.
the end of his career, he was signed to Strange Music.
Yeah.
Damn.
But I don't think you're gonna see him at the Kids' Choice Awards anytime soon, or like, it's not really a mainstream act.
Yeah, it's not even where he want to be.
Nah.
For sure. But before we wrap up, I just want to say, bro, like this is gonna be a phenomenal, bro.
Right on, man.
You got a wealth of knowledge, and you ain't pulled your phone out one time, bro, to
It's
look
off.
to
Phone is
anything.
off.
He ain't Google none of this shit. So just that in itself is a skill to retain all of this information and to make it digestible, not just for me, but for the people that will view this. It's gonna be amazing, bro.
Thanks, bro.
I'm thinking big. I see the vision. You feel me? I've been seeing the vision, but like just being here and listening, it's like, all right, you got it.
No, that's what's up, man. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you jumped on this pilot episode. The team is in place. I feel like everybody is in a position where we can all win and we can all eat off this. And most importantly, is that you, the viewer, are gonna get something that is gonna enrich your lifestyle and give you something to view and something to entertain you and something to educate you. And I'm honored, man. We heard from people from all over, like Fresno and all over the Bay Area. Alcatraz. So, man, I'm looking forward to just reaching even more people and seeing where this goes. So I guess we should sign off. Next week, I'll be back with RBL Posse. The week after that, Conscious Daughters. There's so many more guests to be announced. Sucker Repellent album, September 20th, release party October 7th. Tap in. More content coming daily on social media. Thanks to Amoeba Music San Francisco. Thanks to DEO Official Business, King Said, MVP Productions, Whitney, Scino, Dregs One. And this has been the History of the Bay.